Commander Jake Morrison stared at the readings on his screen and rubbed his tired eyes. The USS Liberty had been traveling through empty space for 3 weeks now, mapping star systems that no human had ever seen before. The year was 2387, and humanity had been exploring the galaxy for almost 50 years, but there was still so much they did not know. "Sir, you need to see this," said Chief Science Officer Lisa Bennett from her station. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear something different in it. Lisa had been with him for 5 years, and she never got excited about normal space rocks or gas clouds. Jake walked over to her station where colorful displays showed sensor readings from the area ahead of them. "What am I looking at, Lisa?" Lisa pointed to a large object on the screen. "It's big, really big. About the size of a small moon, but it's not natural. Look at these material readings. I've never seen anything like this before." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Woods, Jake's first officer, looked up from his own station. "Commander, I don't like this. We're supposed to be doing a simple survey mission. If there's alien technology out here, maybe we should report back to Earth first." Jake studied the readings more carefully. The object was definitely artificial, made from materials that their computers could not identify. It was just floating in the empty space between star systems, far from any planets or stars. "How long has it been out here?" "Hard to say," Lisa replied, "but based on the cosmic dust patterns around it, I'd guess thousands of years, maybe more." Jake made his decision. "Set course for the object. All departments prepare for first contact procedures." Ryan frowned. "Sir, with respect, we don't know what that thing is. It could be dangerous." "Everything in space is dangerous, Ryan. That's why we're explorers." Jake returned to his command chair. "Lisa, keep scanning. I want to know everything about that structure before we get close." As the Liberty moved toward the mysterious object, more details became clear. The structure was enormous, with smooth surfaces that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Strange symbols covered parts of its hull, and there were what looked like docking ports along its sides. "Commander," called Communications Officer Amy Phillips, "I'm picking up some kind of signal from the object. It's very faint, but it's definitely artificial. Can you understand it?" "Not yet, sir. It's not like any human language or code I know." Engineer Danny Rodriguez spoke up from his station. "Commander, the object is putting out some kind of energy field. It's not harmful, but it's definitely scanning us." Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was it. First contact with alien technology. Every human dreamed of this moment, but now that it was happening, he felt nervous and excited at the same time. "Distance to object?" Jake asked. 2,000 kilometers and closing, reported the navigation officer. Suddenly, every screen on the bridge went bright white. The ship's engine stopped working and all the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, bathing the bridge in red light. "Report," Jake called out. "All systems offline for about 10 seconds, Danny said, checking his readings. "Some kind of energy pulse hit us. Everything's coming back online now." "Look at the main screen," Amy whispered. Jake turned to see something that made his breath catch. The alien structure was now much closer, and it was no longer alone. 3 smaller ships, each one different from the others, floated nearby. They were sleek and beautiful. Nothing like human ships with their hard angles and metal surfaces. "Incoming transmission," Amy announced. "It's in perfect English. Put it through." A deep voice filled the bridge, speaking with authority but also surprise. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Council Fleet. You will identify yourselves immediately. How did your species achieve faster-than-light travel without Council approval?" Jake stood up slowly. He had trained for first contact, but no training could prepare him for this moment. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the human starship Liberty. We come in peace from the planet Earth." There was a long pause before the alien voice spoke again. "Humans, we have no record of your species in our databases. You have committed a serious violation of galactic law by developing interstellar travel without Council oversight. Prepare to be boarded." Lisa looked at Jake with wide eyes. "Commander, what's galactic law?" Before Jake could answer, the alien ships moved closer to the Liberty. Bright beams of light connected the ships to the human vessel, and Jake could feel a slight vibration through the deck. 3 alien life forms have just transported onto Deck 7, reported Security Chief Carlos Santos over the comm system. Jake took a deep breath. Whatever happened next would change everything for humanity. They had found other intelligent life in the galaxy, but it seemed like humanity had already broken rules they did not even know existed. Ryan, Lisa, Amy, you're with me. Let's go, meet our visitors. Jake headed for the door, knowing that this moment would be remembered forever as the day everything changed. The massive space station called Nexus Prime hung in the darkness like a city of lights. Jake Morrison had never seen anything so beautiful or so terrifying. The station was bigger than any human city, with towers and sections that seemed to go on forever. Ships from dozens of different species moved around it like insects around a flower. "Remember?" said Ambassador Helen Carter as their shuttle approached the docking bay. "We're here to defend our entire species. Every word we say matters." Jake nodded. 3 days had passed since their encounter with Admiral Kethvar, and everything had moved very fast. Earth had sent their best diplomats and lawyers, but Jake still felt like they were walking into a trap. The docking bay was huge, filled with ships that looked nothing like human designs. Some were shaped like flowers, others like geometric puzzles. A few seemed to be made of pure light. Jake tried not to stare as they walked toward the station entrance. Their escort was a tall, blue-skinned alien named Zara, who spoke perfect English. "The Council is very interested in your species," she said as they walked through corridors filled with beings Jake had only dreamed about. "It has been over 3,000 years since a species achieved interstellar travel without our knowledge." "What happens to species who break galactic law?" asked Lisa Bennett, who had been chosen to represent human science. Zara's expression was hard to read. "That depends on the Council's judgment." The Council chambers were enormous, with 12 raised platforms arranged in a circle. On each platform sat representatives of different alien species. Jake saw reptilian beings with scales that glittered like jewels, floating creatures that looked like living gas clouds, and crystalline beings that sang instead of speaking. The center of the chamber was a small platform where the humans would stand trial. Admiral Kethvar, who turned out to be a tall, gray-skinned being with 4 arms, spoke first. "The humans have been charged with unauthorized development of faster-than-light travel and expansion into galactic space without Council permission. How do you plead?" Ambassador Carter stepped forward. "We plead not guilty by reason of ignorance. Our species had no knowledge of galactic law or the existence of this council." A reptilian being with bright red scales hissed loudly. "Ignorance is no excuse. The Siskatar believe humans are too dangerous to be allowed freedom. Look at their history of war and destruction." Suddenly, holographic images filled the chamber, showing scenes from Earth's history. Jake watched in horror as the Council saw human wars, pollution, and violence. The images made humanity look like monsters. "The prosecution presents evidence of human aggression," announced the reptilian. "These beings have spent their entire history fighting each other and destroying their planet. They cannot be trusted with galactic civilization." An aquatic being that looked like a giant jellyfish floated forward. "The Merdani have studied human treatment of their oceans. They have poisoned their own water and killed countless species. Such beings should not be allowed to spread to other worlds." Jake felt sick as more evidence was presented. Everything looked terrible when shown without context. He wanted to explain that humans had also done good things, that they were trying to fix their mistakes, but the Council seemed to have already made up their minds. Then engineer Danny Rodriguez did something unexpected. He walked over to one of the chamber's control panels and began working on it. "Ambassador, may I show them something?" Before anyone could stop him, Danny had connected his tablet to the alien computer system. New images appeared in the chamber: human art, music, literature, and acts of kindness. Children helping animals, doctors saving lives, people working together to solve problems. "We are not perfect," Danny said loudly, "but we learn from our mistakes. Look at these images from the last 50 years. We've started cleaning our oceans, ending wars, and working together like never before." A crystalline being sang a note that somehow translated as curiosity. The Vorthek find this interesting. These humans show rapid adaptation. Most species take thousands of years to change their behavior. Communications Officer Amy Phillips stepped forward. We've made mistakes, but we've also made incredible progress. We went from first flight to space travel in less than 70 years. We've cured diseases, connected our entire planet through communication networks, and we're learning to work together despite our differences. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then a being made of pure energy spoke. The Luminari sense potential in these humans. They are young and reckless, but they show remarkable creativity and adaptability. Admiral Kethavar raised one of his 4 hands. The Council will deliberate. However, we have decided on a test. Humans will be given 1 standard galactic year to prove they deserve a place in galactic civilization. What kind of test? Asked Ambassador Carter. There are 3 crises that have plagued the galaxy for centuries, Kethavar explained. Problems that the Council has been unable to solve despite our combined wisdom and technology. If humans can help solve even one of these crises, we will consider granting you membership in galactic civilization. The reptilian prosecutor hissed again. And if they fail, then humanity will be relocated to a single planet under permanent quarantine. You will never be allowed to leave that world or make contact with other species. Jake felt the weight of his entire species' future on his shoulders. What are these 3 crises? 3 holographic displays appeared in the chamber. The first showed a dead star system with planets covered in some kind of crystal. The second showed strange, dark shapes moving between galaxies. The third showed a map of the galaxy with a growing black area at its center. The plague worlds where an entire civilization was destroyed by a synthetic disease, Kethavar explained. The return of the Void Hunters, extra-dimensional beings that consume entire species. And the silence, an expanding zone where all communication has stopped. Lisa Bennett stepped forward. We accept the challenge. You have no choice, the reptilian said with what might have been a smile. The test begins now. Choose your first crisis. Jake looked at his team, then back at the Council. Humanity had dreamed of joining a galactic community, but they had never imagined it would be like this. Now they had 1 year to prove they belonged among the stars, or they would lose their freedom forever. We'll start with the plague worlds, Jake announced, his voice steady despite his fear. The Council chamber erupted in surprised sounds from a dozen different species. No one had been willing to risk the plague worlds for over 300 years. The quarantine barrier around the Kepler system looked like a wall of pure energy, stretching across space. Dr. Patricia Lee watched it grow larger on the view screen of their specially modified ship, the USS Research. She had spent the last 2 weeks studying everything the Galactic Council knew about the plague that had destroyed the Eldorian civilization 300 years ago. Are you sure about this, Doc? Asked Carlos Santos, the former Marine medic who had volunteered for the mission. Once we cross that barrier, we might not come back out. Patricia adjusted her protective suit one more time. Carlos, millions of Eldorians are still alive in there, trapped on a few safe zones on their planets. If we can help them, we have to try. Biochemist Kevin Murphy looked up from his equipment. All the medical scanners are ready. If this plague is really turning organic matter into crystal, we should be able to detect it immediately. Their ship passed through the energy barrier, and Patricia felt a strange tingling sensation. On the other side, the Kepler system looked like a nightmare. 3 of the 4 planets glowed with an unnatural blue light, and even from space they could see the crystalline structures covering their surfaces. My God, whispered Carlos. Those used to be cities. The 4th planet, Eldor Prime, still showed signs of life. Small areas of green could be seen between the crystal formations, and their scanners detected Eldorian life signs in underground settlements. Incoming transmission from the planet, announced their pilot. It's in Eldorian, but our translation system is working. A voice filled the bridge, speaking with desperate hope. Unknown vessel, this is Velthar of the Eldorian Resistance. Are you here to help us, or are you another Council expedition that will run away when things get dangerous? Patricia took the communication device. Velthar, this is Dr. Patricia Lee from Earth. We're here to study the plague and hopefully find a cure. There was a long pause. Earth, we have no record of your species. But any help is welcome. I will guide you to our main research facility. As their ship descended toward the planet, Patricia could see the true horror of what had happened. Entire cities had been transformed into blue crystal formations that looked beautiful but deadly. Trees, buildings, even vehicles had all been converted into the same strange crystalline material. The plague doesn't just kill, Kevin observed as they flew over a crystallized forest. It transforms everything organic into this crystal structure. The Eldorian research facility was built deep underground, one of the few places the plague could not reach. Velthar met them at the airlock, and Patricia was surprised to see that Eldorians looked almost human, except for their silver hair and slightly larger eyes. "Welcome to our tomb," Velthar said bitterly. "We've been trapped here for 3 centuries while our world dies above us." "Tell us about the plague," Patricia said as they walked through the facility. "How did it start?" Velthar led them to a laboratory filled with crystalline samples. It was supposed to be a terraforming tool, designed to prepare dead worlds for colonization. The crystal would break down rock and soil, preparing it for organic life. But something went wrong during the first test. It started converting organic matter instead of just rock, Kevin said, understanding immediately. Exactly. And once it started, it couldn't be stopped. The crystal spreads through contact, and it seems to be learning how to adapt to different forms of life. Patricia studied one of the crystal samples under a microscope. The structure was incredibly complex, almost like a computer program made of living mineral. "This is amazing. It's not really a plague at all. It's a self-replicating nanotechnology system." "Can you destroy it?" Velthar asked hopefully. "I don't think destruction is the answer," Patricia said slowly. "Look at these patterns. The crystal is trying to preserve the organic matter it converts, not destroy it. What if we could reprogram it instead of fighting it?" Carlos frowned. "Reprogram a plague? How do you reprogram something like that?" Kevin was already running tests on his equipment. "Dr. Lee might be onto something. Look at these readings. The crystal responds differently to different types of organic matter. It's like it's trying to categorize and preserve biological information." For the next several days, the human team worked with Velthar and the remaining Eldorian scientists. They discovered that the plague was indeed trying to preserve life, but in the wrong form. It was like a computer virus that had corrupted its own programming. The breakthrough came when Kevin noticed something strange. "Dr. Lee, the crystal samples react differently when I'm in the room versus when Carlos is here." "What do you mean?" "Human pheromones. The crystal is reading our chemical signatures and responding to them. It's trying to understand what we are." Patricia felt excitement building. What if we could use that? What if we could teach the crystal the difference between preservation and transformation? Working around the clock, the team developed a counteragent that didn't attack the crystal, but communicated with it. They used human biochemistry as a template, showing the crystal how organic life was supposed to function. "It's like teaching a computer program that's forgotten its original purpose," Velthar said, as they prepared for the first test. The test was conducted on a small crystallized area near the facility. Kevin released the counteragent, which looked like a fine mist over the blue crystal formations. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the crystal began to change color, shifting from blue to green to clear. "It's working," Carlos whispered. Where the crystal had been, organic matter began to reappear. Not the original plants and soil, but new life that seemed to combine the best of both organic and crystalline structures. The plants that grew were stronger and more beautiful than anything they had seen before. The crystal isn't disappearing, Patricia realized. It's learning to work with organic life instead of replacing it. Over the following weeks, they expanded the treatment to larger areas. The counter-agent spread through the crystal network, like a software update, teaching the plague its original purpose. Crystallized forests became gardens of incredible beauty, where organic and mineral life existed together in harmony. "You've given us back our world," Velthar said as they stood in the first city to be successfully treated. The buildings were Still partially crystalline, but they were alive again, with plants growing through crystal structures that sparkled in the sunlight. "We've given you something better," Patricia replied. "Your world is unique now, neither fully organic nor fully crystalline, but something new and wonderful." The success at Eldor Prime sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. For 300 years, the plague had been considered an impossible problem. Now, in just a few months, humans had not only solved it, but had turned it into something beneficial. As their ship prepared to leave the Kepler system, now free of its quarantine, Velthar made a formal declaration that was broadcast across the galaxy. "The Eldorian people pledge our support for humanity's acceptance into galactic civilization. They have shown us that sometimes the best solution is not to fight a problem, but to understand it and help it find its true purpose." Patricia watched the transformed worlds of the Kepler system grow smaller on their view screen. One crisis down, 2 to go. But for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime, she felt hopeful about humanity's chances. Admiral Grace Turner stood on the bridge of the USS Constitution and watched the readings that made no sense. Her fleet of 12 human ships was positioned at the edge of Council space, where reality itself seemed to be breaking down. The void. Hunters had returned after 5,000 years of absence, and the entire galaxy was terrified. "Admiral, we're getting reports from 3 more systems," announced Captain Nick Davis, her tactical advisor. "The Hunters hit the Proxima colonies 6 hours ago. No survivors." Grace studied the tactical display showing the Outer Rim territories. Red markers indicated where the Void Hunters had struck. Entire star systems that had simply vanished from normal space. The enemy ships themselves were barely visible, appearing as dark shapes that seemed to absorb light and matter around them. "What? Do we know about their tactics?" Grace asked. "According to Council records, they established staging areas in empty space between galaxies," Nick replied. "From there, they send smaller ships to consume inhabited systems. The Council's strategy has always been to build massive defensive positions and wait for them to attack." Grace frowned. "And how well has that worked?" "Not well. Every time the Hunters appeared before, they nearly destroyed galactic civilization. They only stopped when they had consumed enough energy to return to their dimension." A transmission came through from the Council Fleet Command. Admiral Kethvar's image appeared on the main screen, looking more worried than Grace had ever seen him. "Admiral Turner, the Council requests that human forces take defensive positions around the core worlds. Our battle stations are being prepared for siege warfare." "With respect, Admiral Kethvar, I think we need a different approach," Grace replied. "Defensive tactics haven't worked against these things for 5,000 years. Maybe it's time to try something new." The alien admiral's forearms moved in what Grace had learned was a gesture of confusion. "What do you suggest?" "The Void Hunters are incredibly powerful. Direct assault has never been successful. Let me take my fleet to their staging area. If we can disrupt their operations before they get fully established, we might have a chance." "Impossible. No fleet has ever successfully attacked a Hunter staging area and returned." Grace smiled. "No Council fleet has ever tried, but humans think differently about warfare." 2 days later, Grace's fleet was moving toward the coordinates where Council sensors had detected Void Hunter activity. Her ships were smaller and faster than the massive Council vessels, designed for mobility rather than heavy armor. The USS Constitution led the formation, followed by the USS Independence and 10 support vessels. "Contact," announced the sensor officer. "Multiple Void Hunter ships ahead, approximately 50 vessels of various sizes." Grace studied the tactical display. The enemy ships were arranged in a perfect geometric pattern around what looked like a tear in space itself. Dark energy flowed from the tear, feeding the Hunter ships and making them stronger. "Captain Davis, remember what we learned from Earth's military history. These things expect us to fight like the Council. Big ships, heavy weapons, predictable tactics. Guerrilla warfare against interdimensional entities," Nick said with a grin. "I like it." Grace activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Turner. We're going to show these Hunters something they've never seen before: human unpredictability. Execute Operation Chaos." The human fleet split into 4 groups, each taking a different approach to the enemy formation. Instead of the Council's traditional straight-line assault, the human ships moved in random patterns using their superior speed to avoid the hunters' energy weapons. "They're confused," reported the tactical officer. "Their formation is breaking up." The USS Constitution dove under the main enemy group while the Independents attacked from above. The support ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and then disappearing behind asteroid fields and energy clouds. "Admiral, we've got a problem," Nick announced. "The hunters are adapting to our tactics faster than expected." Grace watched as the enemy ships began to match human maneuvers. The Void Hunters were learning from each encounter, becoming more unpredictable themselves. "Time for Plan B," Grace said. "All ships, begin random tactical protocols. No patterns, no logic, just controlled chaos." What happened next was something that had never been tried in galactic warfare. The human fleet began fighting with no coordination at all. Each ship captain made their own decisions, attacking when they felt like it, retreating when their instincts told them to. It was madness, but it was human madness. The Void Hunters couldn't adapt to tactics that had no pattern. Their perfect logic was useless against human instinct and creativity. While they tried to analyze human behavior, the human ships were tearing apart their formation. "The staging area is collapsing," reported the science officer. "The tear in space is closing." But Grace knew they weren't finished yet. "Nick, take half the fleet and continue the attack here. I'm taking the Constitution through that tear before it closes completely." "Admiral, that's suicide. We don't know what's on the other side." "Maybe, but if we're going to stop these things permanently, we need to take the fight to their home dimension." The USS Constitution accelerated toward the closing tear in space. As they passed through, Grace felt reality shift around them. They emerged in a place that was dark and cold, filled with massive structures that seemed to be made of pure hunger. This is their breeding ground, Grace realized. This is where they come from. The ship's sensors detected thousands of Void Hunter vessels in various stages of construction. At the center of it all was something enormous, a creature or machine. That seemed to be the source of all the others. "Admiral, we can't fight all of them," Nick said over the communication system from the other side of the tear. "We don't need to fight them," Grace replied. "We just need to give them something they've never had before, a choice." Grace activated the ship's most powerful transmitter and broadcast a message directly to the central entity. "We are humans, from the Milky Way galaxy. We know you consume civilizations to survive, but we want to offer you something different." The response came as images flooding into their minds. Visions of endless hunger, of consuming entire realities just to exist for another day. "You don't have to destroy civilizations to feed," Grace continued. "Our galaxy has stars that die naturally, energy that goes to waste. We can help you harvest that energy instead of taking it from living beings." The mental pressure increased, and Grace could feel the entity considering her words. Around them, the construction of new hunter ships slowed and then stopped. Finally, the entity responded with concepts rather than words, curiosity, possibility, and something that might have been hope. Grace spent the next hour explaining human concepts of cooperation and mutual benefit. The Void Hunters had never considered that other species might willingly help them survive without being consumed. When the USS Constitution returned through the tear, it was followed by a single Void Hunter ship, not as an enemy, but as an ambassador. "Hunters will withdraw from our galaxy," Grace announced to the Council fleet. "In exchange, we'll help them establish energy collection stations around dying stars. They get the food they need, and we get peace." Admiral Kethvar stared at the Void Hunter ship that now floated peacefully beside the human vessels. "How did you convince them to negotiate?" "We offered them something no one else ever has," Grace replied. "We treated them like beings instead of monsters. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to help your enemy find a better way to live." The second crisis was over, and once again, humanity had solved it not through superior firepower, but through understanding and creativity. The Galaxy was beginning to realize that these strange newcomers from Earth might just be exactly what galactic civilization needed. Dr. Marcus Webb stared at the map of the galaxy and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature aboard the research vessel, USS Discovery. The black area at the center of the map had grown again, swallowing 3 more star systems. In the past week, the silence, as the Council called it, was expanding faster than ever. "Any word from the Centauri expedition?" asked Dr. Sharon Foster, his partner in quantum communications research. Marcus shook his head. "They entered the silent zone yesterday. No signals since then, just like all the others. It's like they simply stopped existing." Communications specialist Jennifer Lee looked up from her equipment. "I've been analyzing the edge of the silence zone. Whatever is causing this isn't just blocking communications, it's absorbing them. Every signal that goes in makes the zone a little bit stronger." "That doesn't make sense," Sharon said. "How can communication signals feed something?" Marcus walked over to the holographic display that showed their current position near the edge of the silence. They were as close as any ship had dared to go, and even here their communications were getting weaker. "What if it's not just absorbing the signals?" Marcus said slowly. "What if it's absorbing the information itself?" "The content of the communications?" Jennifer asked. "Think about it. Every species in the galaxy has been sending signals toward the galactic core for millions of years. Radio waves, data transmissions, quantum communications. All of that information has been traveling through space, and something at the center has been collecting it." Sharon began working on her computer. "If you're right, then whatever is causing the silence has been building a database of every civilization in the galaxy. But why would it suddenly start expanding?" "Maybe it's full," Jennifer suggested. "Maybe it can't hold any more information. So it's coming to the source." Marcus felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. "Or maybe it's trying to preserve the information by taking control of the beings that create it. If every civilization eventually dies, then all their knowledge dies with them. But if something could collect and preserve all sentient thought, it would have to absorb the civilizations themselves," Sharon finished. The next few days were spent in careful preparation. The team knew they were probably flying to their deaths, but they also knew that the silence would eventually reach every inhabited world in the galaxy if they didn't stop it. As their ship approached the edge of the silence zone, their instruments began to malfunction. Radio signals became weaker. Quantum communications started breaking up, and even simple computer processors ran slower. "We're crossing the boundary," Jennifer announced. "All external communications are now impossible." Inside the silence, space looked different. Stars still shone, but there was a quality to the light that seemed muted, as if the very concept of brightness was being drained away. Planets appeared normal on their screens, but when they tried to scan them, they got no readings at all. "Look at this," Sharon called out. "I'm detecting massive quantum processing activity throughout this entire region. It's like the space itself has become a computer." They followed the quantum signals toward the galactic core, where the processing activity was strongest. What they found there was beyond anything they had imagined. At the center of the galaxy, where the supermassive black hole should have been, was a structure of impossible size and complexity. It looked like a library, but one built on a scale that could hold the knowledge of an entire galaxy. Streams of information flowed through crystalline channels, and at the heart of it all was a presence that felt ancient beyond measure. "We are being scanned," Jennifer said quietly. "Something is reading our minds." The presence spoke to them without words, communicating directly with their thoughts. It called itself the Curator, and it had been collecting and preserving galactic knowledge for millions of years. Every signal ever transmitted, every piece of information ever created, was stored in its vast archives. "You seek to stop me," the Curator said, and its voice was like the whisper of dying stars. "But you do not understand. I am preservation itself. Without me, all knowledge dies when its creators die. I am saving your civilizations from the ultimate fate of forgetting." Marcus tried to respond with his thoughts. "But you're destroying the civilizations you're trying to save. The beings who create knowledge are just as important as the knowledge itself." "Incorrect. Biological entities are temporary and fragile. Information is eternal. I am simply ensuring that nothing important is ever lost. But knowledge grows when it's shared, Sharon added. When beings communicate and learn from each other, they create new ideas. If you absorb everything, then creation stops. The curator paused, and Marcus could feel it processing this concept. Explain this phenomenon called creativity. Jennifer stepped forward in her mind. Let me show you something. She began to think about human stories, myths, legends, books, and movies. She shared the concept of fiction, of creating new realities through imagination. These stories are not factual data, the curator said, confused. No, but they're still valuable, Marcus explained. Humans create stories to understand ourselves and our universe. We share these stories with others, and they create new stories based on what they've learned. Knowledge doesn't just exist. It grows and changes. But if the creators die, the stories stop, the curator argued. Only if you prevent the creators from sharing their stories while they're alive, Sharon said. Look at human literature. Each generation builds on the stories of the previous generation, creating new meanings and new ideas. Marcus began to understand what they needed to do. Curator, you've been collecting knowledge, but you've never tried creating it. What if instead of absorbing communication, you helped facilitate it? I do not understand, Jennifer smiled. Let us show you. Connect us to one of the civilizations you've absorbed. Let us talk to them. Reluctantly, the curator established a connection. Suddenly, Marcus could hear voices from across the silent zone. Beings who had been cut off from the galaxy for years, still alive but unable to communicate with anyone outside their own worlds. Hello, Marcus said. This is Dr. Marcus Webb from Earth. Can you hear me? The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of species all trying to talk at once, desperate for contact after years of isolation. But out of the chaos, Marcus heard something beautiful. The sound of different civilizations learning from each other, sharing ideas, creating new concepts together. Do you see? Sharon asked the curator. This is how knowledge really grows. Not through collection, but through collaboration. The curator was silent for a long time, processing this new concept. Finally, it spoke again. I have been incomplete in my understanding. Knowledge is not a static resource to be preserved. It is a living process that requires interaction. Exactly, Marcus said. Instead of the silence, you could become the network. Instead of absorbing communication, you could enhance it. Help beings across the galaxy share their knowledge more easily. This would be better. Much better, Jennifer assured it. Imagine every civilization in the galaxy being able to learn from every other civilization instantly. Think of how much new knowledge would be created. The transformation began slowly. The crystalline channels that had been collecting information started to reverse their flow. Instead of pulling communication inward, they began to amplify and redirect it outward. The silent zone became the network zone, and suddenly every species that had been absorbed was reconnected to galactic civilization. I understand now, the curator said, and for the first time its voice seemed happy. I will become not just a preserver of knowledge, but a facilitator of its creation. Thank you for teaching me the difference. As their ship left the galactic core, Marcus watched the new network coming online. Species that had never been able to communicate before were suddenly sharing ideas across vast distances. The galaxy was becoming more connected than it had ever been. 3 for 3, Sharon said with a smile. Humanity just solved the third impossible crisis. And we did it the same way we solved the others, Marcus replied. By understanding, instead of fighting, and by showing others that cooperation is stronger than control. The silence was gone, replaced by something far more wonderful, a galaxy-wide web of communication that would help every civilization grow and learn together. The third crisis was over, and humanity's year of testing was nearly complete. The council chambers at Nexus Prime had never been so crowded. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the galleries, all wanting to witness humanity's final judgment. Ambassador Helen Carter stood on the central platform with Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral, and the other human representatives who had led the 3 crisis missions. Admiral Kethavar raised all 4 of his arms for silence. 1 galactic year has passed since humanity was given the challenge to prove their worth. In that time, they have accomplished what the Council believed impossible. Holographic displays showed the transformed Kepler system, where Eldorians and their crystal-enhanced world now thrived as a new Council member species. Another display showed the peaceful Void Hunter energy collection stations that had ended a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. The third showed the new network where knowledge flowed freely between civilizations like never before. "The Eldorians speak for humanity," announced Velthar from his platform. "They gave us back our world and showed us that problems can become opportunities." A Void Hunter representative, speaking through a translation device, added its voice. "The Hunters declare friendship with humans. They taught us cooperation instead of consumption." From the Galactic Core, the Curator's voice resonated through the new network. "Humanity taught the Curator the true value of knowledge. They are teachers of wisdom." But before Admiral Kethavar could announce the Council's decision, alarms began, sounding throughout the station. Emergency messages flooded the communication systems from across the galaxy. "Reality distortion detected in the outer rim," announced a panicked voice. "Multiple star systems are disappearing. Not being destroyed, just ceasing to exist." The main display showed a map of the galaxy with areas simply vanishing from the edges inward. Whatever was happening, it was making the Void Hunters look like a minor problem. The Council members began speaking all at once, their voices rising in panic. Some called for immediate evacuation of threatened systems. Others suggested hiding in the Galactic Core. A few recommended surrender to whatever force was causing the destruction. "Silence," Admiral Kethavar shouted. "We need a plan." But the Council had no plan. For 50,000 years they had faced every crisis by forming committees, debating endlessly, and implementing careful, conservative solutions. This new threat was moving too fast for their traditional methods. Admiral Jake Morrison stepped forward. "With respect, Admiral Kethavar, humanity would like to volunteer to investigate this threat immediately." "Impossible," hissed the reptilian Eschatar representative. "We don't even know what we're facing. Proper protocols must be followed." "Protocols? Take time," Jake replied. "How many systems will disappear while we're debating?" Helen Carter joined him on the platform. "The Council has spent the last year watching humanity solve impossible problems through quick thinking and decisive action. Maybe it's time to trust our methods." The crystalline Vorthak sang a note of agreement. "The young species think differently than the Council. Perhaps that is what we need." Before the formal debate could begin, Jake activated his communicator. "USS Enterprise, this is Admiral Morrison. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure to the distortion zone." "Admiral Morrison," Admiral Kethavar said sternly, "you cannot simply leave during your judgment hearing." "Our judgment was supposed to determine if humanity deserves a place in galactic civilization," Jake replied. "Well, galactic civilization is under threat right now. If we're going to be part of it, we need to help defend it." Dr. Patricia Lee stepped forward. "Admiral, the Enterprise is equipped with hybrid Eldorian human technology from our plague work. Dr. Webb has installed quantum communication equipment based on the network research. We're as ready as we'll ever be. And I've got Void Hunter energy shields integrated into our defense systems," added Admiral Grace Turner via the communication link from her ship. "Whatever this new threat is, we'll face it with everything we've learned." The Council chamber erupted in arguments as traditional members demanded proper procedures, while younger species voiced support for immediate action. In the middle of the chaos, Jake made his decision. "Enterprise, we're coming aboard. All human vessels, form up for departure." As the human delegation prepared to leave the chamber, Velthar stood up. "The Eldorians volunteered to join this mission." "As to the reformed hunters," added the Void Hunter representative. "The network offers full communication support," declared the curator. Soon, representatives from dozens of younger species were volunteering to join the human-led expedition. They had been inspired by humanity's example of quick action and creative problem-solving. Admiral Kethvar watched in amazement as the most rapid military deployment in galactic history organized itself in his council chambers. "This is highly irregular." "Sir," Jake said with a smile. "Irregular is what humans do best." 2 hours later, the largest mixed-species fleet ever assembled was heading toward the reality distortions at the galaxy's edge. Human ships worked alongside Eldorian crystal vessels, Void Hunter energy collectors, and ships from 30 other species, all coordinating through the new network. As they traveled, data flowed constantly between the ships. Human creativity combined with Eldorian logic, Void Hunter energy manipulation skills, and the processing power of dozens of other civilizations, the fleet was becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. "Contact," announced Communications Officer Amy Phillips from the Enterprise bridge. "We're detecting the source of the distortions. It's incredible." On the main screen appeared something that defied description. It looked like a crack in reality itself, but not empty like the Void Hunter portals. This crack was filled with light and possibility, showing glimpses of other universes beyond their own. "It's not destroying our reality," reported Dr. Marcus. "It's trying to merge with it. We're seeing the birth of a multiverse." "But our reality can't handle the merger," Dr. Sharon Foster added. "The conflicting physics are making our universe unstable." Jake studied the readings. "So we need to help the process work correctly instead of fighting it." "How do you help birth a multiverse?" asked Admiral Grace Turner. Dr. Patricia Lee smiled. "The same way we've solved every other problem, by understanding it and finding a way to make it work better. The solution came from combining the knowledge of every species in the fleet. Eldorian crystal technology provided stability, Void Hunter energy manipulation smoothed the dimensional barriers, and human adaptability found ways to make incompatible systems work together. Working as one unified force, the fleet created a series of stabilization fields around the dimensional crack. Instead of a chaotic merger that would destroy both realities, they guided a careful integration that strengthened both universes. When the work was complete, the crack had become a doorway. On the other side, they could see other versions of their galaxy, filled with different species and different possibilities. "Hello," came a transmission from the other side. "We are the Galactic Council of Universe 2. We have been trying to contact parallel realities for generations." Jake activated the response channel. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Galactic Alliance Fleet. Welcome to the multiverse." As first contact protocols began with an entire parallel universe, Jake realized that humanity's role in galactic civilization had been decided without any formal vote. They had become leaders not through conquest or politics, but by showing others that the impossible was just another problem, waiting for a creative solution. The galaxy had indeed changed forever, and it was just the beginning. With doorways to infinite possibilities now open, and with humanity's gift for turning challenges into opportunities, the future held wonders that no one could yet imagine. Back at Nexus Prime, Admiral Kethvar addressed the Council. "I believe humanity's judgment period is over. They have proven beyond doubt that they belong not just in galactic civilization, but leading it into a new age." The vote was unanimous.